What's going on, guys? My name's Josh and I'm back today with another movie review. Today I'll be reviewing the horror movie Book of Bloods. Before we get into it, if you could please hit that subscribe button and please like this video. So you better watch out because it's time to get this review started. Let's go. Book of Blood is a new horror movie that was just released on Hulu. And this movie is directed by Brennan Braga, and the plot of this movie is a journey into uncharted and forbidden territory through three tales tangled in space and time. And the film stars Britt Robinson, Frida Foshan, and Nicholas Campbell. So what is Book of Blood? So Book of Blood is pretty much three separate horror stories that all kind of tie all into one big story. Now, the first story is about a girl who just recently got out of, it sounds like a mental hospital. She's currently on medication. She had some kind of traumatic experience, and she overhears pretty much her mom saying that she's going to commit her. She decides, she doesn't want to be committed. She runs away and steals money and runs away. She goes to a town where she ends up staying at a kind of like an Airbnb. At first, the people she's staying with seem really nice and just very sweet and welcoming. She soon discovers that it's not all what it seems and these people are twisted. So that's the first story. Second story is about a woman who her son has died of cancer. Shortly after, her son dies, she meets another guy who's a medium who pretty much says, her son's speaking to him. And he is trying to give, her messages of what her son's saying. They two become in a relationship, and then later she finds out, is he a really medium or is he just faking it? Then the third story is pretty much about a guy after this book called the Book of Bloods, and he pretty much is out to find his book. And this is where all three stories start to tie together into one. Opinion on this movie was, it was kind of disappointing. I definitely was hopeful, this being the Halloween season and a new movie on Hulu, that this would be better than what it was. And, three stories wrapped up into one, that could be fun if you do it right. And overall, I would say I was disappointed. But let's get into what I liked about this movie. So I definitely enjoyed the first story the most. I did like the main character, the main actress, Britt Robertson. I recognize her. She was actually in Scream 4, and she was one of the opening kills. So I definitely recognized her, and I think she did a good job as far as her role in this movie. And the first story is where we get the most time with this story. It's about 50 minutes, I would say, the first story. And this one was the most creepiest, and there's definitely some cool visuals in this. And definitely, you kind of don't know what's going on as far as with her character. Her character is on medication, so you're kind of like, is some of this stuff in her head, or is this really happening? It kind of reminded me as well, especially the house she's staying at, the Airbnb. It kind of reminded me of Ursula's garden from The Little Mermaid. So if you remember the movie Little Mermaid and Ursula, Ursula turns all of these people, all these mermaids, into like plant people, and they're just trapped in her garden. That's kind of what this first story reminded me of, where you have all these kind of trapped people in this house. So I thought that was really cool, and the visuals in that were really cool as well. And even in some of the other stories, part 2 and this third story, there was some cool visuals with that as well. So what didn't I like about this movie? I would say this movie is more weird than it is scary. So one, I would say the way this movie is broken up is weird. That's going to be the first thing, or I just don't really like how it's set up. So the first story is about 50 minutes. The second story is maybe about 40 minutes, and then the last story is only 20 minutes. And just the way it's broken up is kind of weird, and it's paced weird as well. I feel like for the very first story, that's when I was the most into this movie, but it took a little while for it to kind of lead up to everything. So you're kind of get to meet these characters, you're getting into the story, and then once you start to get action and the story starts to get good, and that's when I'm invested, it ends. And then you move on to the next story, and I feel like by the time I got to the next story, I kind of was starting to lose interest. So you're with that story for a little bit, and then that ends, and then you're on to the third one. And I just overall, I preferred the first story. I honestly didn't need part 2 and part 3. I know, this was designed to, like, part 3 connects all 3 stories, but I just overall didn't think it worked. it was not really necessary. I really could have used without the second story and the third story. I didn't need these connected. I would much rather preferred, just a movie with the first story being told. And like I said, this movie is just more weird than it is scary. The second story, I didn't really care for that much. And even the third story, I really didn't care for that much. There were some cool visuals. But other than that, I just feel like it lost me. Overall, though, I would say I don't really recommend this movie. I would say it's something you could probably pass on. If you're really bored in your home, when you want to watch a Halloween movie on Hulu, you could watch this. It's definitely, you could give it a watch, but it's not anything that anyone really needs to see. But if you're like me, bad horror movies, I still sometimes enjoy. Especially it being in the Halloween season, we're definitely, short on content. It is a lot different due to COVID, where, normally there's a lot of Halloween movies that you can go see at the movie theater. But since, we're kind of limited on content, you could give this a shot if you really want to. Otherwise, I would say go watch one of the classics instead. But anyways, that is my review on Book of Bloods. If you did see this movie, please leave your comments. I want to know, what did you think of this movie? Did you enjoy it? Maybe I'm just being a little tough on this movie. But either way, thank you so much for watching.